I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up, then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your co-host, along with Lexi Gran. And, oh, by the way, my name's Gabe. But I'm really excited to be kicking off today with our guest. Tom and I are actually buddies. We've done some content, some Sell Better shows together. And I'm really excited to be introducing Tom to our audience. So Tom Alaimo, everybody. He is just, a little bit about him. He's a record-breaking sales leader. He went from an introverted kid, afraid to call, really to a successful sales leader, which I absolutely love. We always talk about introverts always become great salespeople when trained correctly. And he's one of them. He's the founder of TA Sales, of course, with his initials, you know where that comes from. So we're super excited to hear about your business. He's specializes in training, coaching, enablement other sales teams to really create a big, healthy pipeline for long-term success. And his mission is to positively impact salespeople, as many as possible, with core values, right? It's down to doing the right thing, creating, raving fans, and playing the game of sales. So without any further delay, Tom, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gabe and Lexi. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I always like hearing the origin story, right? Because, we don't go to school and we don't get degrees in sales, right? It's interesting how we all end up here. But how did you end up here? How did you, from a kid who was an introvert, get into a record-breaking sales career, and how did you get along that journey to where you are today?
Yeah, it's always fun to hear the intro stories, and I'm still, despite that, I've been a salesperson, now a sales trainer, and doing podcasts like this, still pretty introverted. I was the kid that someone would come over the house when you were growing up, and I'd hide in my room and wouldn't see anyone, and mostly kept to myself. But I was an athlete. I was a scholarship athlete in college. I played tennis competitively, and so usually during the summer I would teach at some camp or something like that. And one summer when I was 19, I got shoulder surgery, so I could not do that. So I'm looking for jobs, looking for a way to make money. I'm in a grocery store parking lot. I see a neon pamphlet on the ground that says, make money, work your own hours. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. And my mom knew it, but she didn't want to kind of spoil the news that this was a sales job. This is for Cutco. So I don't know if you or any of the folks at Alley.
Yes, sharpest knives in the world, right? Yeah,
right, baby. That's right. Lifetime guarantee.
Right.
So for people that don't know, at Cutco, it's pretty much it's kind of like a multi-level marketing scheme where high school and college kids are going to people's houses and selling pretty expensive knives. and it's commission only. And so, as someone that's terrified of sales, that's a pretty weird gig. But I decided to give it a go. And despite being terrified of cold calling and door knocking and actually hanging up on people when they would answer when I first started, I did really well that summer. I was the number 7 rep in all of New England, so the 6 or 7 states in New England, and made some good money. But more importantly, like I found my confidence that summer. That summer changed my life of like, really believing in myself, believing in a growth mindset, and seeing this kind of untapped skill set that I had, and really like, no one had ever explained that sales was a career to me before that, and so I went down that path, and did a few other sales internships during college. Worked at a few different tech companies for about 9 years in my career. Most recently, I was at Gong during part of the explosion there, and just was through my entire career sharing a lot of content, podcasts, newsletters, thousands of social media posts from LinkedIn to Instagram to everywhere else. And now I've been running my own business, coaching and training reps all over the world for the last 2 years. So I skipped over a lot of the details, but that was the origin story.
Well, we're definitely going to get into the details, but I love that story going from, picking up a flyer to, a commission only summer job to obviously going through an amazing, SaaS business at Gong, which we have great friends over there. And of course, doing this on your own. What a journey. And again, you haven't been doing it very long. So it's not like this is the end of your journey. This is really the start of your origin story. But I do have a couple questions about your story in regards to, let's go back to Cutco, right? Because commission only is tough, but you have to go through a lot of rejection. You have to go through what I call, the math of sales, right? Where you have to just kind of play the numbers. And I'm sure they do a great job in training and coaching, but usually when I see commission only jobs, it's, you really have to dig deep internally and really have to have this thick skin to last. And of course, getting top 10 in the country, you were able to figure that out, I'm assuming pretty quickly. So how important is that in, let's just say, more of a, corporate style sales development role, which many of our audience members are in that role? How important is that thick skin, that attitude, and really just that grittiness of commission only that should parlay into more corporate structure type of sales job?
It's everything, man. I mean, I've been in I've sold knives, I've sold $1 million software deals, I've sold my own services, I've helped a lot of different companies in a lot of industries, and there are some unique aspects, of, as I'm sure both of you know, from different industries and different types of sales. But there's a few tried and true practices that will remain as long as humans are selling, and persistence and the grind is one of those. And I think, I learned that as a kid, and that was something that was kind of like beat into me from my parents and coaches of, especially through sports and things like that. That it wasn't always about the outcome, but it was about, did you give your best? Did you give your all? Did you play till the whistle, or whatever it might be? And I think that's why a lot of great salespeople did have some sort of a competitive background, if it was sports or music or academics or a hobby, or something that they took very seriously. And that's what I would always look for in a great seller. It doesn't have to be athletics, but that just happened to be what it was for me. And I think, the key for me that summer, and this has stayed true for my whole career, and I know you both will agree with this based on the business that Alley Oop is in. Um, but the first day that I was set to make cold calls, I'm in this big conference room. There's probably 100 other kids the same age as me, making calls to people that we know to start, like your aunt, your high school baseball coach, whoever it is, to try to get appointments, and then you get referrals, and then you can grow from there. And I'm calling people, and the room felt like it was 1,000 degrees. I'm sweating bullets, and people would answer, and I would hang up on them. And the sales manager at Cutco, he saw what I was doing and pulled me aside. And he taught, he was trying to like boost my confidence a little bit, and he was working with me on the skills. But then he worked on the daily routine. So 7 days a week for that summer, I worked every single day, and I would get up, I would go to the office, I'd make 25 dials, and then I'd go off and I'd have whatever appointments that I could set up. for that day, and I'd be trying to sling blades the rest of the day. And I tell people I would miss brushing my teeth before I would miss making those 25 dials that summer. And to me, that's whether I had a great day or whether I had a terrible day the day before. I still got up and I went in there and I made the dials and I did the inputs that he told me were going to make me successful. And I think that's the key. And that's the same if you're an SDR or if you're a enterprise AE selling, multi-million dollar deals. You've got to figure out what the inputs are and do those every single day and know that that's what's going to lead to success. And that's doing hard things right there. That's why this podcast is so well named.
No, exactly. And I appreciate that because that's where we came up with it, right? We call it DMO. A lot of people call it habits. A lot of people call it routine, right? DMO for us is daily method of operation, right? And I had the same type of mentor you did at the same age as you were at. And I said, you know what do I do to become successful? He's like, let me take a look at your calendar. And my calendar was horrible. I actually had an index card in college where I had to go to class, and that was my calendar. So I had to write and highlight. He was fanatical about it, but he helped me out, and I put everything down in the calendar. When to brush my teeth, when to work out, when to study, when to party, when to go to class, and all of these things. And it's literally my Bible, if you will, when it comes to how I operate. And so every successful person, such as yourself, I see that it's that consistency, that routine that is in place, and mastering what that mundane of just doing the little thing over and over again. Making those 25 dials. I think that's just such an important piece of it. So thank you for that. I appreciate this origin story. I know Lexi's chopping at the bit here. So Lexi, what questions you got?
Yeah, so I love that. And that really has shaped you to build a trusted resource for sales team. How would you say your experience working directly with those salespeople has shaped your approach to coaching other salespeople?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think to me, oftentimes sales, there's levels to this game of sales, right? And oftentimes I think that I tend to work with folks that are earlier in their career, maybe in the first 5 to 10 years of sales. They might be an SDR or a small business AE. And, oftentimes we want like the shiny thing that we see on LinkedIn or on a podcast about a cool subject line to use in an email or, this one question to ask on a discovery call. But I think the DMO, I like that. I might steal that for myself. Is like those habits are what make up 80 to 90% of sales success. It's like the best sellers I know, like they prospect every day. They set up their calls in a certain way. They show up prepared to every call. They follow up within 24 hours of every call. They try to, work with executives and learn business acumen so that they can match that of their buyers. They read industry reports, so they know more about their customers. There's a handful of things that all the best salespeople, no matter what you're selling, do. And so I think a lot of the work that I do with teams, yeah, sometimes we're talking about your cold call opener or what subject line to use or things like that. But oftentimes it's just, how do I be a pro? How do I just show up and do the right things every day that are going to put me in the best, case to hit my goals? And sometimes helping some of those folks like see the bigger picture of, they say, oh, I'm just quote unquote just an SDR or something like that. But if you could be an SDR, you could be anything. You'd be a CEO, you could have any job. That those skills that you learn will carry with you for the rest of your career. And so, yeah, I think it's just a lot of those fundamentals that stack up. And you see someone like Gabe, who's been doing this for a long time really well. And he's still using the highlighted, things that he learned when he was a teenager or, early in his career. So all of that stuff, I think, just really adds up.
Absolutely. So there has to be a pivotal moment, right? Because you're building your own business now, and you were also highly successful at a great SaaS business. What was that moment where you said, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own? Was there a breakout moment for you? Has this always been the goal? Why do this in your own venture versus continuing on in more of a corporate structure?
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to run a business. So we've got a quick side tangent. We have a small family business. My grandfather started it, 50 years ago. It's unrelated to anything we're talking about. It's like in the pottery business. But that's what I saw. That was the model growing up. Like my dad, my grandfather, my aunts, my uncles, they all worked in it. And I didn't want to join the family business, but I wanted to do something. And so I was told that sales was a good place to start. If you could sell and you could lead, you are well on your way to figuring out how to run a business. So I spent a lot of time trying to master the craft of sales, and spent some time in leadership trying to figure out those skills. And while I was at Gong, I loved working at Gong, met great people, learned a lot. I had a poster board in my apartment and it said Tom's escape plan at the top. And so my game plan was, yes, I'm going to do all the inputs of prospecting and trying to be a great seller. But my own inputs are I'm going to create a bunch of content. I'm going to network. I'm going to try to learn. I'm going to read every business book I can. I'm going to try to meet every CEO that I can. I'm going to try to soak up as much of that as I can so that I could figure out a way to just do it, to just like get out on my own. And so I had these plans in my head. And I hit a point in my last year at Gong where because I had been posting content for 7 years probably at that point, almost every single day, I built up a small following and I got a few inbound requests from people that saw my content or some people that bought Gong from me that said, "Hey, can you coach our sales team?" And so I was side hustling doing that for probably 6 months. And it got to the point where I'm saying to myself, "Oh, I've got a little bit of a business here. I'm getting some referrals. People seem to like what we're doing. I get a lot of energy from it. I'm not making as much money as I am at hitting P Club at Gong, but it's a good start." And so I made a agreement with myself. I put a year's worth of expenses in a bank account. I said, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna give myself a year, and if I completely fail on fall on my face, um, I will lose that chunk of money. It's not all my money, and I can probably get another job in sales somewhere, and maybe I even have some good stories to tell, and maybe I can even get a better job because I gave it my all. And now we're kicking off year 3, and thankfully I have not had to do that, and I've been growing the business. It's been going well, and just been bootstrapping it based off of the profits and growing. Year 2 was twice as big as year 1, and hopefully we can keep growing it in year 3. So yeah, it was just like a bet on myself. I was not ambitious enough to like go without a plan or go without even making some money on the side first. I know everyone's different in that regard. But once I took the leap, it's just like you burn the boats and you got to figure it out. And I learned a hell of a lot that year about just like surviving and trying to figure it out. And just been a learning machine trying to soak up as much knowledge as I can in the whole time.
I love it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. And obviously, you shared your insights on many different platforms, content, podcasts. What do you think the most rewarding part of sharing your journey is, and how has that impacted your career?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was at dinner. I'm in Chicago, and there's a guy that I met on LinkedIn who also owns a different type of training business, and we grabbed dinner last night, and we've met up for a handful of times when he's been in town. I was like, "How did we meet?" And he's like, "Oh, we met on LinkedIn, like 3 years ago." I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah, that's right." And it's maybe cliche to say, but I've met a lot of great. Yeah, I met both of you through the internet world of LinkedIn and Sell Better and other webinars and things like that. And now we're here on this podcast, and so I think like there's you can try to be successful by doing all the things that we've been saying, but you can also, kind of like attract success to you and people to you. And I found that the beauty of me sharing all of this content, which is also quite scary, and we could talk about that. And a lot of people shy away from it, but it's helped to like become a magnet for other people that think like me and people that, the 22-year-old Tom would have paid. I didn't have any money, but if I did, I would have paid to sit down with Gabe for an hour and talk about sales. And now, because we're both sharing content, we just happen to meet, and here we are. And so I think that's the beauty of it. And I see, you, Lexi, and a bunch of people at Alley Oop sharing content every day, and you just never know like what one piece can do. to introduce you to a new person or new opportunity that can change your life.
Love it. So yes, calls and content is our, our claim to fame, right? We're making content, which is driving inbound, creating social proof, creating, obviously, validity and just, really getting trust in front of our buyers. And then of course the calls and the action items. We're really seeing like that being separated still in sales departments, right? Where content is over there and then, sales and appointment setting and actually the work itself of picking up the phone and having message conversations is on another side. We're trying to bring both of those things together. Is that important? Do you think that is valuable? I mean, let's get into the weeds now of what you're training and what you're providing in your services to sales and marketing companies when you're consulting with them. What are your thoughts on dividing those types of actions, or does it make sense to bring it together and have it be more synergistic?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start by saying that there's not one way to be successful at sales or at business. So there's plenty of people that are amazing salespeople and even businesses that are doing amazingly, and they've got no print of social, and they don't use LinkedIn or Facebook or anything, and they've been successful. So I don't want to say that, hey, you can't hit your number, you can't be great at sales if you're not also posting on LinkedIn or something like that. But the new wave of sales and a new path to get there is to almost treat yourself like a mini marketer. And if we're in the case where at Alley-Oop, at my training company, when I worked at Gong, we're all selling to sales leaders and we're also in sales in some way. So um, it's makes it a little easier because I'm talking about things that I do and things that I know, and I sell every day. So I can tell stories about deals I won, deals I lost, things I've tried. If I was selling to, an IT manager, well, I've never been one, but I can still find things out about that industry. I can read reports. I can go to conferences. I can listen to podcasts. I can talk to people. I can interview people. And there's a new brand of seller that is using content as kind of their Trojan horse. And I could not tell you, I did a podcast for about 6 years. Um, and it was all while I was a rep at two different companies. One sold to marketers and one sold to sales leaders. I can't tell you how many deals I closed from people that came on the podcast. And whether it was a month later, 6 months, a year later, it just so happened that we had built a relationship and that was the Trojan horse into us winning the deal. Or they were already a customer and then they became a case study, or I got a job offer or whatever it might be. And so I do think that, if your buyer can see that you're someone that cares, that knows what they're talking about around like the industry, you might have some mutual connections. You can just separate yourself from the other person that's just making cold calls or just sending emails. And there's a lot of strategic ways you can do that, placing comments, creating content with them, trying to teach them something. But like that's a whole new way that you can separate yourself that didn't exist when I started in sales, 10, 11 years ago.
Yeah, totally agree. And I know you mentioned before that it's scary getting into posting content. So, what advice would you give someone who's hesitant to start sharing their experiences and insights to the world of sales?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I actually got a text from a friend asking the same question like earlier that I need to get back to him about. So maybe I'll send him this clip. But I started my sales podcast in 2016. I was a year or two into my sales career, into tech sales. And me and my buddy we started a podcast. And our first interview was with my boss. We brought a 6-pack of beer to his apartment in San Francisco, put a microphone on the table, talked about sales for an hour. It was terrible, but it was a start. Um, it took us 3 months to bring up the courage to hit the publish button on that episode. And in our heads, we were thinking, oh, people are going to make fun of us. People are going to, mock us, whatever. What are people going to think? And here's the thing that might even scare some more people off, but I'll try to land the plane here, is that actually does happen. I don't know about for both of you, but that did, like, my buddies made fun of me. People at my company were like giggling about it. My CMO at the time brought me into his office, was like, salespeople should not be posting content. Leave that to the marketers. But then 20 episodes later, we had Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street on. We had CEOs on. We had Hall of Fame athletes on. We hit the top 200 list on Apple one week. Like, we were killing it. And you know who wasn't making any of those comments anymore? It was like all those people. And they certainly aren't now, 10 years later, that a bunch of people are making content, and it's a way to, kind of change, how you're seen in the marketplace. So there is that fear. It's valid. And you've got to just know that some people are going to tease you or comment or be like, what the hell are you doing? But you just got to get past that first bit of like awkwardness. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see a lot more opportunity. You're going to meet new people, and you're going to create new, lanes for you to operate in if you own a business or you're a salesperson or whatever you're trying to do.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. It's 2025. You're going into companies, you're doing an audit, you're unpacking, what the issues are, what the gaps are, what the problem may be, and then you're coming in there and fixing it, right? That's what you do. So, what's like the one, two, or three things you're seeing right now in this landscape, this marketplace that we're in, which is quite, turbulent and definitely a bit of a crazy roller coaster over the last few years than over the last 10. So, walk me through that. Like, what are some things that you're uncovering with companies that are really hot right now, that are trending, that you're seeing?
Yeah. And for context, most of the teams that I'm working with are in tech. Oftentimes, our sweet spot is like a Series B, C, or D funding. So they've got venture backing, they're hiring, they're growing the sales team quite a bit. And that's usually the stage that they're in. So that's the context, because I'm not sure who's going to be listening to this exactly. And so for those teams, there's a few things that come to mind. Number one is, um, in the current economic environment that we're in tech, most companies are not in a growth at all costs environment. And so what they were doing in, 2021 is not what they're doing now. And so oftentimes what I see is that there's a really misaligned ratio of sales rep or SDR to manager, frontline manager, or any enablement help or any support there. So it's not uncommon for me to come in and there's a director of SDR, and there's 22 SDRs and maybe one frontline manager, which is insane. I mean, how could you possibly coach, develop, train, be there for 22 people, and be able to, and then also you're hiring and interviewing and doing all the other things that you need to do. So I think teams are being forced to do more with less, and less frontline help or enablement help. And that's something that we certainly come in and try to help with. Um, a second piece is, you couldn't have a podcast in 2025 and not talk about AI and tech and automation. And so a lot of companies are trying to figure that out. And there's certainly some cool tech. Um, and I think people are experimenting with what that means in like the intent world, the signal world, the AI SDR world, the AI's writing my emails world. And there's a lot of, I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I think a lot of teams are still misusing the automation that came out 6 years ago. Like, they're still sending a ton of automated emails from their sales engagement platform that are just not very good, and they're not personalized. Or they're sending, lame, like just lame follow-up emails that don't break through the noise. And so um, they're caught to the flashy object without really nailing the process beforehand. Um, and I think the third thing and the last thing I'll say for now is, I think the best teams are doing what you alluded to 10 minutes ago, Gabe, around content. And SDRs or AEs that are prospecting are working more closely with marketing when they're doing it well. And they're teaming up and they're coming up with, hey, here's where we're seeing the opportunity in the healthcare space in New York City. Great. Let's host a dinner there and let's run some ads and let's get some people in the house to like meet face to face. And then we're seeing a bunch of pipeline come from that. Or they're sponsoring webinars, or they're doing other things, they're creating their own podcasts and having prospects and customers on. They're doing things like that are a little bit unique off the brand. And sales and marketing are not at odds. They're working with each other to try to figure out like, hey, we're both tasked with creating more pipeline and revenue, so we're doing this together.
Yeah, agreed with all of that, and especially what you say about AI. Where do you see the future of that? And what do you think is too much versus too little AI? And how do you think people should implement that in their strategies?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think, well, there's always the question of like, hey, is AI going to replace salespeople? Is it going to replace SDRs? Personally, I don't think so. I do think just like other technology, I think it's going to replace more repetitive tasks. I'm already seeing that happen. So, the best SDRs or the best leaders, you can use AI to do a bunch of account research. You could do account research that took you an hour, and you can make it 5 minutes by using even something like free like ChatGPT. Um, I've seen some companies around like AI bots that will make cold calls for you or that will, automate a video message for you or write emails for you. I haven't seen any that have blown me away personally. I don't know about you all. So I think there's a ways to go for that. But I think the first step is like, you should have that as part of like everyone's job should be to experiment. And like I'm using AI a lot for brainstorming and like running ideas off of and saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is some context about our business. Like, what are 5 ideas that you might try? By the way, pretend that you're Gabe Lullo at Alley and these 3 other business leaders that I appreciate and want to like model after. What would they do in this scenario? Like, who would they reach? What would they say in their cold call? I think AI can help you with things like that, but I don't think it's automating the entire process yet. I don't know if you all are seeing anything different.
No, we do, and when ever I get that question asked, and it's a great question, Lexi. I tend to say the same thing when it comes to account research, right? It's about knowledge, and knowledge is power. But at the end of the day, it's really not unless it's applied, right? So our intention is, the actions and the actual time in which human interaction is valuable and important. That's not going to be replaced by AI. But the time in which we can be effective and still efficient, that is where AI, I think, lives. And, it's about having conversations. And I look at the SDR job as it's really simple. It's about getting 2 people in a room together who both have interest in talking to each other. And that's it. And so here's my question. And I like to ask this one on every call. And it's a point blank question. Cold calling. Is it dead? Yes or no?
No.
Why?
I think it is the quickest way to generate pipeline. Right. I could pick up the phone. I could call Lexi right now and I could try to get her live. Now a bunch of nuances that we're going to add to this. Okay. So first of all, there's a lot of well-researched data that says that sellers that use 3 or more channels might book 5 times as many meetings as someone that only uses 1. So look, I know sellers that book most of their meetings only on call or only on email or only on video or LinkedIn, or they have a preferred channel, which I think is natural. Everyone's better at certain things. But by omitting other ways to reach someone, you're lowering your odds. Even if, let's say you're an amazing emailer, you don't really like cold calling. That's pretty common. I would still recommend make a couple calls and have your voicemail direct them back to your email. Send a LinkedIn message and have it direct back to your email. If that's your best channel is email, find a way to get them to read that email because they might not be reading it right now. So, you want to use all those platforms. The other thing that I'll say about when everyone's leaning one way, so like everyone's leaning into how do I automate? How do I send back 5,000 emails? Like, what's working right now? Handwritten letters. What's working right now? Getting face to face with people. I was talking with a buddy of mine who's an RVP at Salesforce. I won't. Yeah, I'll keep it anonymous past that. And he was telling me about a President's Club winning rep. So a good sales rep. They have a big meeting. They have a big dinner with a client. And an hour before, he calls him and tries to like call in sick, even though he had worked all day because he'd been in sales for years. He'd never met a prospect or a client in person before. So we're dealing with this post-COVID, kind of like generation of sellers that they might not have been on planes. They might not have met people. They might not be writing handwritten letters. They might not be doing some of these things that scale. And so, depending on your role, like how could you lean a little bit heavier into some of those things that create a more human experience, joining communities, creating content together, things like that that are outside of the automation bucket, that can help you stand out. So I love doing stuff like that, and cold calling can be an aspect of that too.
I have one more because you brought up communities, and I actually had this down as a topic to talk about. And you nailed it because post-COVID, right? We have people not going to events for a long time, people not going to different types of seminars or conferences for a long time, people not even able to do what you just mentioned, doing a face-to-face luncheon at all. And so I think been this rise of communities coming out, right? There's a lot of them out there. But now people are looking at, hey, do I really want to spend this much money to go to a conference? And we've lasted for months and years over through COVID to not do that. This seems too expensive when I could just maybe do something different, a different channel, like you mentioned. But what we are seeing, ourselves included, is, you know, referral partnerships, networking, communities, collaboration, in the same ICP is at a significant rise. And there is obviously that human component, relationship type of business, kind of like how you were doing back in the day with Cutco, that relationship marketing, right? That friend to friend referral partner type business. That's very much happening in B2B right now. What's your thoughts on it, and what do you think companies should be doing if they're not doing it?
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, we're in a unique spot because we're both in service businesses, and from my experience of selling tech and selling service, I've noticed that um, there's a higher emphasis placed on referrals and shared partnerships in a service business, because I think it's hard because you don't demo the product. It's not as tangible as like, hey, I'll give you this software. You try it out for 2 weeks, and then you either buy it or you don't. But I think it's a really underplayed channel in any sort of sales and any software sales too. And I think these micro communities are where a lot of things are happening. Like someone like, we have a mutual friend in Scott Lease. He was on the forefront of this with like hosting events and getting partnerships and affiliates and screaming that from the mountaintops. I think that's where a lot of deals are happening, is a dinner with 12 people at it, or a partnership that happens because you're both selling to a similar ICP, but you're not competitive with each other. Hosting events, hosting webinars, creating content, or even going to a community event, even if you're not sponsoring it, and meeting and building relationships with your ICP and you're not there to sell. You can do this if you're a business owner, or you're a budget holder. If you're a rep, here's an example. I've got a friend who sells security, to tech companies, or he's at a tech company rather. And he has a Des Moines, Iowa territory. Well, he found the Des Moines CISO happy hour that happens monthly. And he had, it was his first sales job. He went to that damn happy hour every single month, drove from Chicago to Des Moines, sat in there, didn't know a lick of what they were talking about for about 12 months. After a year, people started to, acknowledge him, that he existed. And now, 5 of his biggest deals last year came from people that he met, just built relationships with, networked with, and then, maybe they had a follow-up meeting, not at the event, but afterwards. And that's how he's built his book of business. And so, yeah, I think it's huge. I'm personally leaning more into it. I'm trying to partner with a bunch of people that I think are like-minded, and we're trying to reach the same audience, and put together a cool event or a webinar or a podcast. And it's a different channel than only making the cold calls or only running ads or something like that, or going to Dreamforce and trying to, buy a booth.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously, I think strategic partnerships are definitely growing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on where they're going, what excites you most about the partnerships that you have and are in the pipeline of creating.
Well, if anything, I should be asking you same question. I feel like you all are killing it with partnerships from what I see and from what we've talked about. But um, yeah, I think, to me, I can only speak for what's important to me, and I think there's a few things. One is, you want to feel like you have similar values with the person and the company that you're working with. because I have made the mistake in my first. By the way, I've probably made every rookie mistake of owning a business in the first 2 years. So people can look me up if you want to learn what not to do. But part of that was partnering with people and companies that felt like a quick win because it was a big name or a sexy logo or something like that. And it turned out we didn't really have similar values. And so if they were doing something shady, that actually looked negative on me. And, although we got off the ground quickly, 6 months later, I'm kicking myself and it actually cost me a lot of time and money and lost opportunity that way. So I think you want to have shared value. And I think like starting small, it's easy to think like, hey, I'm going to get a partner. And then tomorrow I'm going to expect, Alley Oop is going to send me, a 6-figure deal that, is just ready to sign. And it's just not that, at least in my experience, it doesn't quite work like that. These relationships are built up over time and you're making deposits in them. And if you want someone to refer you business or help you out, then what are a few things that you could do to take the first step to lead that? Like, could you send them someone? Could you come up with an idea for what an event might be? Could you, introduce them to another partner or share an idea that's worked? Like the more generous you are, I find that the more generous people are in return. And if you just sign up and hope that deals fall in your lap, at least in my experience, that's just not how it's worked. What would you, I'm going to put Lexi on the spot. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I love all of that. And I think what I'm most excited about is that I'm just starting to see more partnership network events happen. I know there's some happening in Tampa where I'm located. So I think it's really cool that people are going to start bringing together their networks. And the more you engage with your partners, obviously they have people that they're partnered with. So really just building out and branching through partnerships is, I think, awesome. And I think it's definitely growing and more people are hopping on board. So I think there's a lot to come there.
Sure. Tom, this has been awesome. Before we let you go, I have a couple questions, for you is like, who is that audience member that you would like to talk to? Who's the ideal client profile to come work at TA, right? And to come take a look at them. What type of company is it? What type of title or persona would that be?
Yeah. So, yeah, appreciate the ask. It's, we're typically working with high growth startups in tech. And usually I'm working with either, the VP of sales or whoever runs the business development team. So, we've worked with recently with folks at PandaDoc, at Vidyard, at Manhattan Associates, Catalyst Software, Gainsight, companies like that. And so, yeah, I would love to, if anyone hears this and is open to a chat or even just open to talking shop, I love to nerd out on all things sales.
How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way. You can, it's just my name on LinkedIn. You go to tasales.co if you want to learn more about what we're doing, but I'm very reachable on LinkedIn. So shoot me a DM, let me know something that you learned or something that you liked about the podcast. And yeah, we can take it from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tom, for coming on. We appreciate you. To all the audience members, check out Tom. His content is great. He's phenomenal on LinkedIn. And he's absolutely dynamite to work with. So again, thanks so much, Tom, for hopping on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. Thanks, Lexi.